All right, welcome to day one of the chess visualization training program. And if you look at the chessboard, you'll notice there's some interesting paint on it. And by the time we get done with this first session, you'll understand why it's painted up the way it is and why I have it painted like that. But to start out, what I think we should do is clear the paint off the board and just note a few of the characteristics of the chessboard. So the first thing I want to point out, and these things may seem obvious, but I think it's important just to note these characteristics. And first thing I'd like to mention is that white goes in the bottom right. That's kind of like an anchor point. So when you're setting up the chessboard, you always want to make sure white's in the bottom right. But we can actually use that for other reasons other than just making sure the chessboard is set up correctly. So as you notice, white in the bottom right, that's the H1 square. And then if we flip the board and pretend we're sitting at it from black side, white is in the bottom right, again, at A8. And interestingly, these two squares, A8 and H1, are what we call corresponding squares. And what that means is if we draw a line down the axis from H8 to A1, if we pretended we had a mirror and we're reflecting the images out of this mirror, A8 and H1 would reflect each other. They're corresponding squares. So that's just one thing to point out and note. And then what I wanted to do was I kind of came up when I was studying and trying to get better at visualizing myself and working on it. I kind of found a certain, what I like to I'll call it anchors. And these can be helpful things to anchor onto or latch onto until we get really good at visualizing the chessboard, and then we don't need these anchors anymore. That's the ultimate goal. But for those of us who started chess later in life and didn't get to a high level of chess while we were still young, we need to work on these things. So today we're going to look at some light squared anchors, and these will help us kind of orientate ourselves to visualizing the chessboard. And this will be kind of make more sense as we move along in the course. But for now, what I want to do is point out that if we go, we'll flip it back to the starting position. So we're looking at it from white side right now. White is in the bottom right. And what I like to do is make this, I kind of call this an extended corner, or it almost looks like an X-wing fighter jet or an X. But if you notice, this is like an extended corner, and all of these squares are white. So it makes up an extended corner in the bottom right. And so what I would like you to do is just look at this image. Just stare at it for a while. Just notice that it consists of H1, H3, G2, F1, and F3. So just kind of stare at that a little bit, and then close your eyes just for a few seconds and just try to see that residual image. Now it'll fade pretty quickly because we haven't developed these muscles yet, but you just can imagine that kind of X-wing corner, extended corner, with H1 in the bottom right, G2 in the middle, H3 on the upper right, F1 on the lower left, and F3 on the upper right. So just look at it a couple times, close your eyes, then look at it again, and try to burn that image into your head. And now let's go back to our corresponding square concept, and let's draw an axis or a line down the axis of the chessboard. Let's redraw our extended corner, our X-wing fighter, if we want to say it that. And then let's highlight all of the corresponding squares. So the corresponding square of F3 is C6. The corresponding square of G2 is B7. The corresponding square of H1 is A8. The corresponding square of H3 is A6. And the corresponding square of F1 is C8. And now let's flip the board so we're looking at it from black's perspective. But just note how we have mirror image corresponding kind of X-wing fighters in the corners, these extended corners. So we'll flip the board, and you'll see that this square is currently H1. When we flip it, it will become A8. So once again, you can kind of burn that image in your head. Pretend you're sitting on the black side of a chessboard. Kind of stare at that image. Then close your eyes. Try to recreate that image in your head. Just that corner. Don't worry about the rest of the board. Just look at that corner. A8 is in the bottom right corner. B7 is diagonally up to the left. That's also a light colored square. A6 is 2 squares up from the corner. That's a light colored square. C6 is 2 squares diagonally up from the bottom, and that's a light colored square. And C8 is 2 squares to the left of the bottom corner, and that's also a light colored square. And those 5 squares make up that kind of X-wing fighter corner or extended corner, and they are all light squares. So go ahead and look at the board. Just kind of burn that image in your mind again. And let's flip it over and look at it from white again. And then the last thing to just kind of notate for today, and then I'll kind of briefly mention the purpose we're doing this, but let's just note that these 2 extended corners, or these X-wing fighters, the light squared ones, are connected to each other by E4 and D5. That tethers those 2 units together, and those are central squares. So now that's all you really need to do for today. I'll go through something additional stuff you can do if you want, but the important thing is just to kind of take this in and realize that going forward, this is one part of an anchoring system that we're going to use. And the idea is, if we learn this very, very well, if we burn this image into our brain, it will take time to do that. Don't feel like you should be able to do that right now. But with some practice, if this image can come to you very quickly, it can help you tie the rest of the board together. And that we will be weaving that in as we go through this month of training. So my suggestion would be, before you do the next training, maybe just once or twice when you have a down moment or two, just try to visualize that extended X-wing corner, those 5 squares from the white perspective, and then resurface, come back out, then pretend you're sitting at the black side of the chessboard. So A8 will be in the bottom right corner, white in the bottom right, and mentally visualize this extended corner or X-wing fighter image. And that's enough if that's what you want to do for today. It's actually kind of more important than you think. If you want to, you could also do some training on the Chess Vision Trainer on chess.com or the Coordinate Trainer on Lichess. And just like you did when you did the pretest, maybe do it once or twice from each color, without the coordinates on. And maybe what you can do is, if you're doing the trainer and any of these come up in these extended corners, slow down and really look at it as you're doing the trainer. So that's it for today. I know it seems a little esoteric or weird for now, but trust me, this will help as we go through our training program. All right, see you at the next session.